Joe Biden is going to prove yet again that he really, really, really should not be the nominee because he's going to take Donald Trump's bait on Syria. Now, you know, we've done many segments on what happened in Syria with Donald Trump pulling out of northern Syria. And it is a very complex and complicated situation. I've given you my solution to it. After this clip, I'll walk you through it again, but just understand how this comes across to the relatively apolitical observer, okay? Try to view this clip through the lens of somebody who's relatively apolitical. They vote all the time in all the elections, but they're usually busy and not paying attention too much to politics. They tune into this Democratic debate. And then here's his answer on Syria, and if you look at it through that prism, I think you'll clearly see why this answer is problematic.
I want to turn now to foreign policy. President Trump ordered the withdrawal of all American forces from northern Syria, abandoning America's longtime Kurdish allies. As a result, Turkey has now invaded Syria. ISIS detainees have escaped, and the Kurds have announced a new deal with the government in Damascus, a victory for Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad and Russia and Iran. Vice President Biden, we know you would not have withdrawn troops from northern Syria in this way, but that is already in process. So would you send American troops back into northern Syria to prevent an ISIS resurgence and protect our Kurdish allies?
I would not have withdrawn the troops, and I would not have drawn the additional 1,000 troops who are in Iraq, which are in retreat now, being fired on by Assad's people, and the President of the United States saying, if those ISIS folks escape from the prisons they're in, they'll only go to Europe and won't affect us. It has been the most shameful thing that any president has done in modern history, in terms of foreign policy. And the fact of the matter is, I've never seen a time, and I've spent thousands of hours in the Situation Room. I've spent many hours on the ground in those very places in Syria and in Iraq. And guess what? Our commanders across the board, former and present, are ashamed of what's happening here. What I would do is I would be making it real clear to Assad that, in fact, he's going to have a problem because Turkey is the real problem here. And I would be having a real lockdown conversation with Erdogan and letting him know that he's going to pay a heavy price for what he has done. Now, pay that price.
Just to clarify, Mr. Vice President, would you want American troops back in northern Syria?
I would want those 1,000 troops to be protected by air cover, those 1,000 troops that are having to withdraw under fire, make it clear that they're not going anywhere, and have them protected, and work my way back toward what in fact needs to be done, protecting those Kurds. They lost their lives. This is shameful, shameful what this man has done.
So the problem is not that we pulled out of Syria. The problem is the exact way in which we did it. Because I got news for everybody, the U.S. is in Syria illegally in the first place. It is completely illegal under U.S. law and under international law. And if you think that doesn't matter, okay, well then you just imagine a situation where Iran or any country you want to name decided randomly, yeah, we'll just occupy the Gulf of Mexico and maybe put some troops in southern Texas or something. It's okay, don't worry about it. You'd be like, are you kidding me? That's an act of war. That's a violation of our sovereignty. Exactly. So we're there illegally in the first place. Giant problem, can't be overlooked. But the way he pulled out, yes, he created a massive power vacuum and basically gave the green light for the Turks to invade Syria and go after the Kurds. The long-standing, differences that the Turks have with the Kurds, and they consider all the Kurds there terrorists. It's not true, but that's what they consider them. So it was basically, you had to know that was going to happen. So what should have happened is, again, this is the solution in my mind. We should still get out, but what we should have done is had UN peacekeepers fill the vacuum of U.S. troops being there so that would deter Turkish aggression because they know they can't fire on UN peacekeepers, and it would have worked. It would have had the same effect as having U.S. troops there, okay? Or the other thing is you could have sat down, played middleman, and brokered a deal between the Kurds and the Syrian government, because the Kurds, even though I believe in a free Kurdistan, technically they're still Syrian Kurds. So, you sit down with the Kurds and the Syrian government, and you broker a deal where the Syrian government forces will take the place of the U.S. troops, and that would also deter Turkish aggression. So that's the solution, Joe. But instead, what does he do? He does the worst possible thing you could do, which is gives Trump the mantle of he's the anti-war one, he's the non-intervention guy, and then he picks up the mantle of, yes, I would keep troops there, I'm pro-intervention. Even if you are pro-intervention, you have to be politically savvy enough to know you can't just argue for it like you argued for it there. Because I got news for you, Joe. In your little circle in Washington, D.C., people don't agree with this. Poll the American people on all these different wars, and they poll in the teens, dude. They poll in the teens. It's like 18%, 19% for certain conflicts, Afghanistan, Iraq. Like, yes, it is true that what happened to the Kurds was terrible, but you cannot do this stupid knee-jerk reactionary, backlash of, I'm going to take the opposite position of Trump, therefore war is good, and now I want to stay in Syria indefinitely. And make no mistake, that's exactly what he's arguing for. Oh, we got to protect the Kurds. Okay, so what's the timeline for withdrawal? Withdrawal? We're not withdrawing. What are you talking about? This is Lindsey Graham 101. Lindsey Graham said this when he ran for president and got 6 votes. He was asked by, I think it was on CNBC, a CNBC host, how do we get out of Iraq? And he goes, you don't get out. Whoa, so permanent occupation? Yep. That's the philosophy. That's the mindset. Joe Biden called this the most shameful foreign policy move in modern history. Well, I mean, he voted for the Iraq war, so I guess that's why he wouldn't count that as the worst when that definitely was the worst. Hundreds of thousands of people, minimum, died. Thousands of U.S. soldiers died. Broke a region, led to the rise of ISIS, wasted $7 trillion when all is said and done. You got Afghanistan, $2 trillion wasted there. Trump has done worse foreign policy things. Trump is seizing shipments of food going into a starving country as he pretends like he's so concerned for the civilians of that country, namely Venezuela. He pulled out of the Iran deal and is escalating to war with them. Are you kidding me? This is what you're going to pick as the worst, the most shameful foreign policy move. Notice, and I said it before, I'll keep saying it. They only do the moral outrage stuff when we withdraw from somewhere, never when we go there illegally in the first place. Again, being in Syria was illegal in the first place. You know what one of the most shameful moves in modern American history on U.S. foreign policy is? I don't know, maybe arming and funding jihadist rebels, as we've done. Maybe arming and funding Saudi Arabia as they're doing a genocide in Yemen, and Trump is backing them up and reaffirming that by vetoing the War Powers Act that was against it. Notice, none of this stuff was brought up. None of it's brought up. And he's giving Trump the mantle of, yes, you're the anti-intervention guy. Trump just sent thousands of troops to protect Saudi Arabia. Nobody wants to do that. That polls at like 13%. Nobody wants it. Why? Because, well, we're supposed to be Saudi Arabia's military. We're supposed to go to war with Iran to protect Saudi Arabia. Has Joe brought that up? No. Will Joe bring that up? No. Is Joe against that? No. See, this is the thing, guys, and this is why I get so frustrated, is all the worst aspects of Trump, he's not even against. He's not even against it. So here we go again, man. I told you guys, it really is the case that in the era of Trump, people's brains have been broken. Because I'm not sure I've seen a single person coherently describe exactly what should happen in Syria. All there is now is a panic, fake moral outrage, and all there is talk about, oh my God, we abandoned the Kurds. And that's the end of the conversation. Nobody says, okay, well, what should we have done exactly? Like, what's the move? Nobody's acknowledging that we were there in Syria illegally. And if you agree with us being there illegally in the first place, boom, you just bought into the logic of American empire. You just say, on that alone, I know you don't care about international law or U.S. law. Because again, it wasn't approved through Congress, which it has to be if we're going to go to war. We've been there for years. So it drives me crazy because it seems like there's people just drop their principles, have no principles, don't care about these conflicts, except in the context of just, I'm going to own Trump and I'm going to disagree with Trump. There's plenty of stuff to criticize Trump for, even with this specific move. But the way in which they're doing it is so mindless that it drives me crazy. And, but hey, I should be thanking Joe Biden because what he's doing here is proudly taking the mantle of being pro-war. Okay, well, at least he's being honest in that sense. At least he's not even pretending like a lot of the other candidates, like Mayor Pete was pretending in the past. He's anti-war, and then now all of a sudden, boom, massively pro-war because Trump did one little thing that could be nominally viewed as anti-war, even though it's not really. So I hate it. It makes me mad. It drives me crazy. And that's why this show exists, because I don't know who else would be pointing out how terrible an answer that was if it wasn't for me. Corporate media will give him nothing but props for that answer. They think, oh yeah, strong leader. Like, okay. He didn't even give you a solution. His only thing he said was send the troops back and give them air power, so get in there even more. Don't just send the troops back, send them in plus air power, so get even more in the region. This is the spectrum of debate that is allowed in corporate media, and that should drive you nuts if you're a real left-wing person.